Nowadays, there are lots of rumors that are saying that Fabric is far better in terms of performance compared to Forge, but is that actually true? Does Fabric really give much better performance in comparison to Forge? And so in today's video, I'm gonna compare both Forge and Fabric between each other in many different scenarios to see which one performs better and which should you consider when you prefer performance in the first place. I'm gonna do multiple performance tests as well as tests with the same mods for both Forge and Fabric. Alright, so before I start my performance test, I'm gonna show you my PC specs, Minecraft version, etc. For the test, I'm gonna use Minecraft version 1.20.1 paired with the Forge version 47.3.0, and for another instance, same Minecraft version but with Fabric version 0.15.11, as well as the latest version of Fabric API 0.92.2. And also thanks to Adobe and its beautiful program called Premiere Pro for literally forcing me to buy 64GB of RAM, so thanks to them I can fully enjoy Minecraft with 32GB of allocated RAM. Alright, the last thing. These are my PC specs and here's the full information about my GPU if someone is interested. Alright, since I've already mentioned the GPU, then why don't we start with the GPU utilization test and FPS test as well. So the way I'm going to test my GPU is that I'm going straight up to the shaders. Since Minecraft isn't really GPU intensive, I think shaders are the best way to benchmark the GPU. On Fabric, I'm gonna use the well-known Sodium paired with Iris shaders, and on Forge, I'm gonna use Embedium paired with Oculus. If you're not familiar with these mods, just consider them as Sodium and Iris but on Forge. For the shaders, I chose 3 different shaders from the least GPU intensive to the absolute GPU burner. So let's start with the least intensive one, the Silder's Enhanced Default shaders. I teleported to the same area and I've used the same seed and let Minecraft generate the chunks, and then I started testing the GPU. Oh, and also, in case you're wondering, here are the versions of the mods and shaders that I've used. Alright, so as you can see, with the least GPU intensive shaders, my Minecraft is giving about the same FPS actually. All information was about the same on both Fabric and Forge, so here I literally have nothing special to say. Moving on to the mid-range shaders that are pretty GPU intensive actually, the Complementary Reimagined shaders. And again, same situation as with the previous shaders, no difference at all. Let's directly move to the most beautiful and equally the most GPU intensive shaders that I could ever find, I guess. The SEUS PTGI HRR. These are the path tracing shaders as well, and the only difference that I saw here is that on Fabric the 0.1% lows were a bit lower and more stuttery, while Forge had stable 30 to 32 0.1% lows, Fabric had from 18 to 28, but overall no major difference at all. And now regular FPS test while standing still and doing nothing, about 980 FPS on Forge and 960 on Fabric, almost the same result except for the 0.1% lows, which were way higher on Fabric, about 260 on Fabric and about 75 on Forge. And now FPS test without any mods, and almost the same as before, no difference except for 0.1% lows. What really caught my eye though is that Fabric was sometimes using a bit more RAM than Forge. If you look at all of the tests, you can see that Fabric usually uses about 1 to 4% more RAM, which actually surprised me. So let's move straight onto the RAM test. For the RAM utilization test, I've decided to turn my render and simulation distance to 32 and teleport to a completely different location and see which one uses more or less RAM. I also removed all the mods and installed better F3 so that I could remove all the crappy junk from the F3 menu and I could only see the RAM utilization. And for some reason MSI Afterburner was showing the wrong RAM usage, I guess. So because of that, I'm gonna use Minecraft's F3 menu to see my RAM usage, and I also disabled clouds as well so that I could see properly. So after teleporting to the same location and turning my render distance to 32 chunks, it seemed like Fabric was eating a bit more RAM, I guess. Because if you look at the RAM usage, you can see that Fabric was using from 3 to 7 gigs of RAM compared to Forge's 3 to 5. Not gonna lie, it was pretty surprising to me seeing this, especially after I've heard so many times that Fabric is better in performance compared to Forge. Anyways, let's move on to the CPU test. For the CPU utilization test, I decided to install the Distant Horizons mod version 2.10 because it's well known for literally burning your CPU while generating new chunks. And I also decided to install Sodium on Fabric and Embedium back on Forge because Minecraft is literally unplayable without these. And to get Distant Horizons to work with Sodium, I had to install Indium version 1.0.30 as well. I've also set my render distance at 256 in the Distant Horizons mod and 12 chunks regular render distance. And without further ado, let's come to the tests. While generating chunks, my performance was about the same. RAM utilization, CPU usage, GPU, FPS, everything was actually about the same. And I think it will be pretty fair if I stop my tests at this point, because there is no difference at all. After all the rumors that I've heard, I was kinda surprised to see that Forge actually performs the same as Fabric. And with that being said, let's come to the conclusion. Does Forge really perform worse than Fabric? Well, according to my tests, no, not at all. At least on my hardware, I guess. Maybe if you have a weak hardware, then it will show some difference, but overall I haven't noticed any major difference in performance between these two. So I guess you don't have to worry anymore which mod loader you should consider if you're worried about the performance. Subscribe.